Hey, thank God it's Friday. Well, right now it is Friday and 18 degrees, so which is quite pleasant and cloudy right here in Brisbane today. And on the eve of the elections 2022. So tomorrow is the big day. Well, of course, we can see that there's lots of people who are already pre-polling, which is good to see because, if you are eligible, why not? And there have been some problems with the people who have now been tested positive to COVID. They cannot go to the polling booths, but they have missed the time to qualify for postal votes. So what's going to happen? So that's a little bit of a limbo situation there. The few people have been caught up in that situation where they're supposed to just go to the booth, but now they have tested positive. And if they have tested positive, they are not allowed to go to the polling booths, and they have gone past the date to qualify for postal votes. So there has to be some other system as well. Well, we'll see what really happens, but people are gearing up for tomorrow, hopefully catching up with that social sizzle and trying to get all those how-to-vote cards from each and every party. Whose one do you take? Whose one don't you take? Are you giving anything away? What is happening? But it will be, all done tomorrow. Well, right now, let's get on with the news for today. And the first news we have today is the aged care sector. Let's take a look at that.
Always the last part of it is a mad rush.
Today on the menu we have fisherman's bake with golden roasted potatoes, pumpkin and green beans, and we'll be serving about 98 residents.
So this is a nice soft dessert for residents and it's very tasty.
Lunchtime at this Brisbane nursing home may look like a simple meal, but there's an exact science behind it.
I would say it is one of the most complex spaces for a chef to be working. We have residents that on average have 8 to 10 medical conditions.
Thanks for that, Rita. Yeah.
Consultant dietitian Cherie Hugo makes sure meals are packed with nutrients. The residents are assessed every 6 months to ensure the strategy is working.
Here you go, love. That's definitely
We've demonstrated we can turn malnutrition around by up to 44% in 3 months with evidence-based food-first approaches.
The residents of Zion Nunda Aged Care Home are loving the changes too.
I am very happy to come here and have a meal every day. It's presented nicely and I do try to have my veggies because I know they're very good for me, and if I want to keep my brain and everything else going, I have to have that.
But not all aged care homes provide such good meals. Evidence of shocking food in nursing homes with an average cost of just $6 a day was heard at the Aged Care Royal Commission. In last year's budget, the federal government announced extra funding of $10 per resident per day. Aged care homes have to report how much they spend on food in order to get the payment.
How do you know that the $10 will actually filter through to residents so it won't be put in the pockets of aged care providers?
We're putting hundreds of extra audits every year. There's going to be new powers for the regulators.
But the reports submitted by nursing homes showed that a third, or almost 900 operators, are still spending less than $10 a day on food. They were referred to the regulator, which audited 41 of them, less than 5%. It found 3 had failed food standards.
And I don't think without a clear audit trail, without the spreadsheets and so on, you can be sure that they actually did spend the money on this.
The reports also show most nursing homes say they are spending about $14 a day. But with more than $3 billion of extra taxpayer support being paid out, 730 can reveal the health department doesn't require providers to supply any proof of their spending, telling them, "We are not asking you to provide us with spreadsheets or evidence that supports your answers."
No, I don't think it's okay because the whole idea was that it would go to food. And so that tightness and transparency, real transparency, is to me essential.
My mother, she is a vital person and not really fussy with food, but she loved fresh, healthy meals. And so she used to say to the nurses and the staff there, hey, some of us have teeth.
Julia Davis says the food served to her mother Barbara at Castlemaine Health was so bad she was forced to take drastic action. She moved to regional Victoria to personally cook meals for her.
She was becoming really, really frail. She would have starved if I hadn't have been there, in a way. That's how I felt.
Julia thought things would improve with the new supplement, but says she saw no change.
I took a couple of photos of the evening meals because I was horrified. I'm not precious, but there's absolutely no way I could have eaten that food.
She complained to management and the regulator, but the Quality and Safety Commission found the nursing home still met all food standards. Castlemaine Health said that most consumers enjoyed the food, however it declined to say how much it spent per day. Anne Schneider has worked as a dietitian in aged care for more than 20 years and says many homes still have a long way to go.
I see things like, particularly say the evening meal, where often cheaper or low protein items are served. Things like little pies and pasties, fish patties with not much fish in them, tin spaghetti. I'm still seeing the same issues pop up that I did 20, 30 years ago. Very often we're seeing people with very little skill and no training making clinical decisions every day about what to put on a person's plate.
It was 3 years ago, just as the Royal Commission was starting, that the federal government turned to Australia's most famous chef from the Barossa, Maggie Beer. It gave the Maggie Beer Foundation almost $600,000 to create a series of online training videos to help cooks working in aged care homes.
I want us to work towards every bite of food in aged care being equal measure of nutrition and pleasure. It is for the things that I could see that just aren't being talked about or taught in any way, because we have virtually no specialised education for cooks and chefs.
The videos were released just last month, but they're not free. Aged care homes or staff themselves have to pay $480 for the 11 modules, or $44 per half-hour lesson.
Join us for this important training series for aged care cooks and chefs.
Not every residential aged care facility is going to participate, because some are very small and can't afford these things, even if it's a small price.
So there you go. It also works in with what people can afford and what size those aged care units are. But I really think that the government needs to set up a uniform standard so that it's right across the board, whether you are a small operator or a big operator, because people pay a lot of money to go into those aged care homes in this last golden years of their lives. They need to be treated well and fed well, meaning, food that is up to the standard, food that they would like, and with all care, with all due care, it must be served. Well, right now, back on the election trail, there's been so many things that we've been promised and out. Well, maybe there's one good outcome for this Billawilla family.
Never giving up.
It has been a hell of 4 years.
Angela Fredericks has led a compassionate campaign to get the Nardesalingam family back home to Billawilla.
We all have those memories in our mind of what happened after the 2019 election, when they were put on a plane and they were being sent back to Sri Lanka. And we remember the screaming, we remember the manhandling.
Their supporters were able to secure a last-minute injunction, keeping Nades, Priya and daughters Kopika and Tanika here while they negotiated a legal minefield. But their treatment, sent to immigration detention for 3 years after their refugee status was rejected, sparked national protests.
We are Australia.
Now living in community detention in Perth, they wait. Their lives dependent on the outcome of Saturday's election result.
I am so sick to my stomach just knowing what's going to happen. Essentially, the fate of these 4 people's lives are in the balance.
Labor is resolute.
We need to get them home to Billow. Under a Labor government, they will get home to Billow.
But the Prime Minister is unmoved.
There is no protection owed. They have not been found to be refugees.
Despite a push from some on the Conservative side.
No, I believe this four-wheeler family should come here. No question about it.
I'm just going to tell you, my position is the same.
There's no place like home, and this is where the families say they belong. But the legal tug-of-war isn't over yet. The families received incredible support from the community here, but it's still a polarising case as voters cast their ballots ahead of election day.
Everyone needs a place to stay, and obviously they're a good family.
They've cost us a lot of money, and knowing that they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and using their kids as a ploy to stay here, I think that's terrible.
What Angela Fredericks thinks is terrible.
We've got over 500,000 Australians asking the government to intervene in this case.
Is they've had to wait this long. Toby Loftus, ABC News, Billawheeler.
There's always the two sides of the views, and of course some people have their own way of looking at things, but there's great community support behind this family. Well, time will tell. Right now, what is election promises by Labor?
Laura, it's the 11th hour for costings to be released. It's not that unusual, of course. What do Labor's tell us?
Well, they don't tell us that there's a huge disaster in debt and deficits terms, Lee. It shows there's a net difference between the government's costings to date and the Labor costings of $7.4 billion over 4 years. It's not a huge amount considering the government spent about $80 billion in discretionary spending since last year's budget.
Anthony Albanese has had a fractious relationship with his travelling media pack during this campaign. Let's have a look at a bit of today.
During this campaign, I have been completely accountable. I've just, if you actually get out a calculator, I've just told you what the costings are.
So $7 to $8 billion difference.
I've just told you.
Is that right?
No, because the and here's the hypocrisy. Quite frankly,
Laura, what's going on with this back and forth aggression? Because we're not hearing that same kind of thing going on in the Morrison press conferences.
Well, I think in the Morrison press conferences, Scott Morrison is without a doubt much better at just running the press conference. He's just got all of that experience behind him as Prime Minister. And in the case of Anthony Albanese, I think the press pack smelt blood in the water after his initial stumble on the unemployment rate all those weeks ago, and they keep going for the next stumble. And he hasn't really quite learnt the art of just running things his way. Now, things were inflamed today because quite clearly the travelling political party was very angry about the sort of focus on costings yesterday. So they said, right, if you're also obsessed about costings, we'll send the press plane back to Canberra for the announcement of those, and Mr Albanese will go to Brisbane to campaign. There was a bit of a riot about that. The decision was reversed, and that set up the sort of very, very hostile tone of the press conference today. So it was a bad call in terms of relationships to make that call on the bus, but I also find the way the media have behaved in this not really all that not very professional, really, because all they were sort of saying, you could hear them saying, "Oh, just tell us the figures, tell us the figure," and it was never going to be a huge cost blowout. We know that because Labor has been sticking so closely to the government on costings.
Just quickly before you go, Laura, it's polls as far as the eye can see in the final week of the campaign. There was one more tonight from Ipsos.
Yes, we've just seen the Ipsos poll from the Financial Review. It's showing the gap closing in primary vote to 36 to 35, still in Labor's favour, still a 53-47 two-party preferred vote, but we're down to hand-to-hand combat in a few individual seats. It's really tight.
Laura, thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that report. As we know that, as per that report, that the Prime Minister was a little bit more polished on how to run these press conferences. Well, right now, right here in Queensland, the election contest heats up.
At the Caboolture markets north of Brisbane, as people shop for fresh food, they're weighing up their choice at the ballot box.
I think we just got to stick with what got at present.
You're not convinced by Anthony Albanese in Labor?
No. Well, I've already decided who I'm voting for, which is not the current government.
The outer suburban seat of Longman is the LNP's most marginal in Queensland, with a buffer of only 3.3%. Cost of living pressures are front of mind.
I always vote for the Labor, so...
What are the issues you're voting on this election?
You know, supporting families, and they always look for the long term of childcare and rebates and everything, Medicare, because we are low income earners.
I don't take anything for granted. All I do is try and work hard, find out what the community needs and deliver those needs.
First-term MP Terry Young took the seat off Labor last election, but Longman has regularly changed hands since 2007, and the ALP is pushing hard to get it back.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Fanning for Labor.
How are you, Rebecca?
Good, thank you.
Bribie Island, an area favoured by retirees, swung hard against Labor last election, helping to keep Scott Morrison in the lodge.
Vote Labor for a better future.
Thank you.
The ALP candidate Rebecca Fanning is trying to turn the party's fortunes around by stoking anti-Morrison sentiment.
Under Scott Morrison, things are just getting harder and harder. We now have a crisis in terms of GP and primary healthcare services. You know, costs of living are skyrocketing while people's real wages are going backwards, and we have an aged care system that just isn't good enough for our elderly Australians.
One of the big things with Longman is about 30% of the electorate don't vote for the major two parties. This time One Nation and the other minor parties are mostly preferencing Terry Young, so the LNP. So in Longman, I think he's in with a fighting chance, even if there is a little swing against the coalition.
I'm Paul, a pensioner from Bribie.
Labor is running ads on social media claiming the government plans to put aged pensioners on the cashless welfare card.
I won't risk my pension on Scott Morrison. Don't risk yours.
Scott Morrison calls it a disgusting lie, but Rebecca Fanning isn't backing away from the claims.
It is Scott Morrison and Anne Ruston who said that they want to apply the cashless welfare card more broadly.
But there's no current proposal to introduce it for pensioners in this electorate, is there? Scott Morrison has called that a lie.
Well, what everyone knows is that you cannot believe a word that Scott Morrison says.
Terry Young, madam, member for Longman. He's done a lot for us with all the different things. The Veteran Centre and things like that. Terrific.
Terry Young wasn't available to speak with 7:30. In a previous interview with the ABC, he insisted voters should stick with the coalition despite inflation and interest rates going up.
We've implemented tax cuts. People are going to be $1,500 a year better off, keeping more of what they earn. That's important. The childcare rebates that we've introduced have been very, very well received.
To the south, in the seat of Lily, it's Labor which is battling to hold on to a wafer-thin margin. Annika Wells holds the seat by just over 0.5% after suffering a strong swing against her in 2019.
We won the seat by 1,229 votes. I took it as a lesson that nothing beats grassroots campaigning.
3 months ago, I thought Lily was very marginal and very winnable, and if there were even a slight swing or the coalition just held its vote, that was certainly going to be in play.
But the Liberal National Party campaign has been dealt a blow. Its candidate Vivian Lobo has kept a low profile since allegations emerged he falsely claimed to be living in the electorate. The Electoral Commission has asked the Federal Police to investigate. We've just turned up here at Chermside. This is the biggest pre-poll booth for the seat of Lilly. But there's no sign of the LNP candidate Vivian Lobo, and people say they haven't seen him here on the booth. Just wondering if you guys have seen Vivian Lobo today.
Mate, I don't know, I only just got here. Yeah, so, yeah.
Does it hurt the vote not having the candidate on the booth like this?
I just got here, so I wouldn't know. Looks all right, people taking how to votes, yeah.
I'd certainly prefer campaigning against a call flute to a candidate. That's not an enviable position for any campaign to be in, but it's also quite disrespectful to the people of Lilly.
7:30 requested an interview with Vivian Lobo, but he did not respond. In an earlier statement, Mr Lobo said he delayed moving into the rental property in the electorate due to his campaign commitments and difficulty getting tradespeople.
The coalition could mount a bit of a challenge by getting preferences and the like, but I suspect Annika Wells will be one of the more fortunate Labor members in the country.
Highest number of women apprentices, so if any of that appeals to you...
Last election, Queensland's support for Scott Morrison was crucial to another coalition term. But 3 years on, has the sentiment shifted enough to change that?
With Scott Morrison, I can't wait to see him go, quite frankly.
I think we need change. I really do.
I vote for the Liberals, yeah. And I just think if you want an economy, focusing on economy, I'll stick to the people who are in power now.
So there you are. And of course, that controversy around Vivian Lobo not living in the area but declaring that he was living in the area might work against him. But anyway, we'll wait and see what happens. And he's not been seen at the, pre-poll booths. Well, right now, moving on, something else that is bothering people, well, small businesses, they are really concerned about this wage rise.
Sally McManus, looking at the numbers today, it's undeniable that this is the best jobs market workers have seen in 4 decades, isn't it?
Yeah, well, unemployment levels haven't really changed since the last reporting, so it's at 3.9. I think they actually revised the last ones to 3.9 as well. We know that there's still big issues in terms of a record amount of people working multiple jobs. I think the real issue is the quality of those jobs and how many of them are insecure, 1 in 3, as we know. And, of course, the biggest issue of all, which is how much people are earning and their pay increases, and the fact pay is not going up right in the middle of a period of high inflation and the incredible pressure that's putting on, most working people at the moment.
You want wages lifted by at least 5%. What's your message in particular to small business owners who are worried about those wage demands?
Look, the number one thing I'd say to small business is that yes, you'd have to pay that amount for your staff if they're already on that absolute minimum. But I do know that most small businesses in the area of hospitality and retail, their number one issue is keeping their staff or attracting staff at the moment. They're already paying people more than what the absolute minimum is. And so if you've already done that, that wage increase isn't going to affect you. It's only for those on the absolute minimum. Second thing I'd say is that if we don't see wages go up for workers, they're your customers. If your customers are having to cut back on things, the first thing they cut back is their discretionary spending. We're already seeing this as an issue, and the issue of consumer confidence levels that came out the other day.
It's a chicken and egg argument. I mean, ACCI says 2/3 of businesses are facing increased operating costs and less than half have been able to pass that on to customers. CBA puts it at 25% of small businesses not being able to pass on high costs. Do you accept that there is, despite the economy running hot, that it is a tough time for many businesses out there?
Well, 2 things. First of all, the other part of that equation is all that they are passing on. When they say passing on, that's putting up prices for people, and that's part of what's going on. Who's bearing the cost of inflation? Is it businesses or is it consumers and workers? And that we can see from those figures is actually mainly consumers and the public. So that's what I'd say there.
Do you accept that higher wages may mean higher unemployment?
Listen, no. The other thing I would say is this. I also do not accept the arguments from business to say that they're struggling. And I'll say this because Profits are up 13%. Sales are up between 10 and 15%. The number of bankruptcies are at a 10-year low. The number of new businesses are at 10-year highs. All the indicators actually show that business, big and small, is recovering well. The biggest threat to that is consumer spending, and consumer spending will depend on people having wage increases that keep up with the cost of living and hopefully are a bit more than that.
How disappointed are you that Anthony Albanese won't guarantee that he'll formally ask Fair Work to lift the minimum wage by 5.1%?
Well, if they get elected on the weekend, we would want them to do so. We would want them to put in a submission or a statement to the Commission. Actually, most of the action in terms of the annual wage review is over. If there's just an opportunity to put in final statements, post-election, and we would like them to do that.
Shouldn't they do that before the election if that's what they intend to do? If they want to be clear with the Australian public and small businesses and workers about what they intend if they form government?
Yeah, look, what we're worried about is what the Commission listens to, and what they listen to is the government of the day, and the government of the day and what they think and what they are prepared to back, not what various political parties in opposition think.
Mr Albanese also said yesterday at Press Club that Labor will have, quote, a unique opportunity to restore momentum between the ACTU and COSBO, or the Council of Small Business. What do you think this means?
Well, I can say this, is that, there's goodwill between our organisation and COSBOA, and, that's been built up over a period of time. I think that it's actually got a lot to do with the common experience that we went through during the pandemic. Workers got smashed and so did small business. Like, we're in the same boat there, and we've got to know each other quite well. During the working groups that the coalition government convened, which we participated in at the height of the pandemic, I think that there was a chance of us reaching agreements on, some areas, although it was very restricted ability to negotiate under a coalition government, in a way dangerous for us as a movement, because we always worry that a coalition government is going to just legislate stuff that takes away rights off workers.
So to be specific, COSBOA wants more flexibility. Is that something that the ACTU would ever countenance, given that you're campaigning against flexibility and casualisation of the workplace?
Depends what you mean by flexibility. Quite often employers, mean it one way, and it's all about flexibility for them. And sometimes, when we talk about it, it's about flexibility all just for the employee. And so you can use the term flexibility and everyone can say, oh, we agree with that, but actually we're talking about two different things. So, I don't want to sort of, speculate about this, but look, any solutions that are going to be ones that are going to undermine the rights for all Australians and all Australian workers, and are ways that address the legitimate issues that small business may have, of course, we'd be prepared to consider.
And just to pick you up on something that you said earlier when you were talking about working with COSBOA during the pandemic, you acknowledged that small businesses got smashed throughout that period. Do you think that those small businesses have recovered enough since then to be able to shoulder a 5% wage increase?
My same point is that you look at the statistics around sales, you look at it around business survival rates, you look at it around new businesses starting up, and you look at the issue of their consumers. I think that it is a bad thing for small business if their customers have less money to spend, and that's the biggest danger, not about wages going up for the amount that we've asked for.
Sally McManus, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hasn't convinced me, but anyway, everyone's got their own point of view, as we know that one increase leads to another. Somewhere it needs to be absorbed. So where do we stop? Where does this cycle finish or end? So it just keeps going up and up and up and up. Well, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. India has successfully conducted the maiden flight test of an indigenously developed naval anti-ship missile.
The Defence Research and Development Organisation and the Indian Navy
on May 18 successfully conducted the maiden flight test of an indigenously developed naval anti-ship missile launched from a naval helicopter from Integrated Test Range in the Chandipur off the coast of Odisha state. The mission met all its objectives. It is the first indigenous air-launched anti-ship missile system developed for the Indian Navy. The missile followed the desired sea-skimming trajectory and reached the designated target with a high degree of accuracy, validating the control, guidance and mission algorithms. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh congratulated DRDO and the Indian Navy and associated teams for the maiden developmental flight test. He said, India has attained a high level of capability in indigenous design and development of missile systems. Secretary Department of Defence R&D and Chairman DRDO Dr. G. Satish Reddy appreciated the efforts of the project team. He complimented the Indian Navy and the Naval Flight Test Squadron for their support of the project and said the system will strengthen the offensive capability of the Indian Navy. The Indian Navy has been steadily enhancing its overall combat capability to protect India's maritime security interests effectively, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on May 17th launched 2 frontline warships of the Indian Navy. Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO has lined up a Satisat 75 student satellites for launch this year to coincide with the 75th anniversary of India's independence. The Indian Space Research Organisation Chairman S. Somnath, during a joint meeting of science departments and ministries chaired by India's Science and Technology Minister Jitendra Singh, said that ISRO plans to launch a Satisat and 75 student satellites this year to coincide with the 75th anniversary of India's independence. The Indian minister said that over 55 startups have registered with ISRO in just about 2 years since the space sector was open for private firms. Singh said out of 55 proposals, 29 are satellite related, 10 for space applications and product, 8 related to launch vehicles and 8 about ground systems and research. He said 9 proposals from the startups are expected to be completed by 2022-23. According to Singh, priority implementation of S&T solutions to 204 odd problems from 38 line ministries received for scientific applications and technological solutions by all the 6 S&T departments coordinated by CSIR. He said inputs have been received on areas of participation from all departments, while the Department of Biotechnology and ISRO have submitted their preference for leading in solution development. Deployment for a few challenges, Singh said different scientific applications for sectors like agriculture, food, education, skill, railways, road, Jal Shakti, power and coal, to name a few, are being worked out since the launch of the initiative in September last year. More than 6.6 lakh people in the Indian state of Assam have been hit by floods and at least 9 people have died. Flood has thrown normal life out of gear in the Indian state of Assam. Hojai and Kachar are the worst hit districts. More than 1 lakh people have been affected in each district. The army has rescued more than 2,000 people trapped in Hojai district as a part of the ongoing rescue efforts. Dima Hasao district in South Assam remains cut off. Landslides triggered by rain have cut off road and rail links to Dima Hasao. It has also snapped the road and rail connectivity to the Barak Valley as well as vital parts of Tripura, Mizoram and Manipur states. The Assam government will provide financial assistance of ₹4 lakh each to the families of those who died. The Met Office in Guwahati has issued a warning of widespread rain across the region over the next 4 days. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has assured Assam of all assistance from the central government. In a tweet, he said he has already spoken to Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma. The state has been struggling to maintain the supply of essential commodities in the flood-hit areas and restore communication channels. Meanwhile, 2 people have died in Bengaluru of Karnataka state where southwest monsoon triggered thunderstorms accompanied by heavy rain that have led to waterlogging and power failure in many parts of the city. The Weather Department has issued an orange alert in many parts of rural and urban Bengaluru, predicting heavy rain for the next 4 to 5 days. As the crisis continues, reports suggest that Sri Lanka can't find the cash to pay even one ship for petrol. Sri Lanka is facing the worst economic crisis of its independent history. Shortages of everything from food to cooking gas have resulted in Asia's fastest inflation, with prices surging almost 30% and spilling over into social unrest and political turmoil. Sri Lanka has asked citizens not to queue for gasoline as the nation is on the verge of default, has no dollars to pay for a fuel shipment. The Sri Lankan Energy Minister told Parliament on May 18th, "There is a petrol ship in our waters. We do not have the foreign exchange." End quote. Sri Lanka hopes to release the ship on May 19th. The nation also owes the same supplier $53 million for an earlier shipment of gasoline, he added without elaborating. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, less than a week old into the job, said a few days back that the nation has only 1 day's stock of gasoline and the government is working to obtain dollars in the open market to also pay for 3 ships with crude oil and furnace oil that have been anchored in Sri Lankan waters. On 19th May morning, India's Bombay Stock Exchange Index, the Sensex, crashed over 1,000 points on weak global cues, and the National Stock Exchange Index, Nifty, was down 314 points. Indian equity benchmarks on May 19 plunged sharply in opening deals amid weak cues from the global markets. Asian stocks tracked a steep Wall Street sell-off as investors fretted over rising global inflation, China's zero-COVID policy and the Ukraine war. In the morning, the 30-share BSE Sensex crashed 1,106 points or 2.04% to 53,103, and the broader NSE Nifty moved 314 points or 1.94% down to trade at 15,926. Mid and small cap shares were weak, with Nifty mid cap down 2.38% and the small cap slipped 2.80%. On the stock-specific front, Tech Mahindra was the top loser as the stock crashed 3.72% to Rs 1,128.40. Bajaj Finserv, Infosys and Wipro were also among the laggards. Around the close of the day, BSE Sensex was hovering at 52,792.23 points. The Nifty was at 15,809.40 points. Indian Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur announces major SOPs to boost shooting of foreign films in India. India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur is leading an Indian delegation to the 75th Cannes Film Festival that is underway at the French Riviera. Currently, India is the country of honour at the Cannes this year, and many artists have flown to France to be a part of the festival. Thakur inaugurated the India Pavilion and unveiled the poster for the 53rd edition of International Film Festival of India at Cannes. While addressing the attendees at the India Pavilion at Cannes, Thakur announced major SOPs to boost the shooting of foreign films in India. Incentives up to ₹20 million for co-production and up to ₹25 million for shooting foreign films in India were announced. Indian cinema is a story of human talent, triumph and trajectory of the new India. Cinema has emerged as an instrument of a soft power in the last 7 decades, Anurag Thakur said. At Cannes 2022, Bollywood star Deepika Padukone serves another majestic look and exudes retro vibes in a stunning sari. Bollywood star Aishwarya Rai made her first red carpet appearance this year at the 75th Cannes Film Festival in a black gown with a pillowing silhouette with floral essence and an extension of 3D flowers on one sleeve. Her ensemble was from the shelves of Dolce & Gabbana. While Bollywood superstar Deepika Padukone was the centre of attention as she walked the red carpet at the opening ceremony of Cannes Film Festival. Deepika, who's also the part of the Cannes jury this year, chose a black and gold shimmery sari by ace designer Sabyasachi Mukherjee. Deepika had her hair tied in a bun and accessorized it with a golden hairband. The actress opted for a dramatic look with kohl-rimmed eyes, nude lips and contoured cheeks. Deepika is a part of a 9-member jury that will pick the winners of this year's Palme d'Or honours at a gala ceremony in Cannes on May 28th. The other jury members include actor-filmmaker Rebecca Hall, Noomi Rapace, and Italian actor-director Jasmine Trinca, as well as directors Asghar Farhadi, Jeff Nicholas and Joachim Thirer.
It's such a huge honour.
It's not something that our country's sort of seen very often. So I think when we are given the opportunity, I think we take it with a lot of humility and a lot of gratitude.
Tamanna's red carpet look captured her beautiful black and white gown. Her look has been styled by Charlene Nathani. The actress's makeup was also on point. She accessorized her look with diamond earrings. She said she was really excited about the event.
I'm so excited about this. It's such an honor, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Bollywood actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui will star in the American indie film Lakshman Lopez. Bollywood actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui is set to play the lead role in Lakshman Lopez in the American independent production.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all I have for you on this Friday. But don't forget the election day tomorrow. If you can and if you are eligible, please do your pre-polling today. Get it out of the way to avoid the big mad hour rush for tomorrow. But again, tomorrow there's quite a lot of centers, and go about in that community spirit. Enjoy the barbecue, meet the locals, and cast your vote there as well. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. Well, before we go, I think we should have a quick look at what's happening this weekend in terms of functions and events. Yes, that would be good.